In 1691, Robert Kirk completed the manuscript that would define his life. It was called The Secret Commonwealth of Elves, Fauns, and Fairies, and he published this during a time when heretical ideas still carried very real consequences. Kirk's book was a theological and philosophical bombshell. He claimed that invisible non-human beings lived alongside us, and through a strange ability that he named Second Sight, people could see them. But Second Sight wasn't a blessing, it was dangerous. It was a gift passed down through families who had lived on the land for generations. They were people who could see beyond the veil into the spirit realm. And what's strange is that his description of Second Sight mirrors modern reports of alien abductions. The credible reports of abductions that we do have tend to run within families. Before Kirk could publish his work, he died. One morning after walking up Dune Hill, a known fairy mound near Aberfoyle, he vanished, and according to local legend, his soul was taken. The next day, they found his body and declared that he had died of natural causes. But the people said otherwise. They said that the fairies had taken him, that he had gotten too close to the truth. And stories like Kirk's aren't isolated. Across the world and across centuries, there are eerily similar accounts. Gervase of Tilbury was a 13th century English journalist who recorded the story of a shepherd near Bristol who found a hidden underground kingdom populated by small ethereal beings. After spending a few minutes there, he returned to find that years had passed in the outside world. This is one of the earliest recorded stories that we have of missing time. Missing time would later go on to become a feature in both fairy stories and UFO encounters. In the 19th century, American doctor and occultist Pascal Randolph wrote extensively about non-human intelligences that influenced human thought. He referred to these entities as elemental intelligences. He said that they were beings that operated between the human and angelic realms. In one of Randolph's records, he described a woman who had believed that she was being guided by a beautiful spirit who gave her prophetic dreams. But over time, the dreams grew dark and she became mentally and physically ill. Randolph said that she had fallen under the influence of a deceptive intermediary being who initially appeared helpful, but slowly corrupted her. Different eras, different languages, different cultures. Fast forward 3 centuries, a computer scientist named Jacques Vallée, who was one of the early architects of the internet, revisited Kirk's work. In his book, Passport to Magonia, Vallée makes the provocative argument that UFOs might not be spaceships from distant planets, they might be interdimensional beings. He believed that these beings weren't new, that they were ancient, and that they adapted their appearance to fit whatever a culture would be willing to accept. It was controversial at the time, but today, Vallée's interdimensional theory has become one of the most widely respected frameworks in serious UFO research. He went on to write this: "The symbolic display seen by the abductees is identical to the type of initiation ritual or astral journey that is embedded in the myths of every culture. The structure of abduction stories is identical to the accounts of fairy lore." Vallée noticed patterns, beings that appeared and vanished at will, promises of advancement, false enlightenment, and he also noticed that they had physical evidence, burn marks on bodies, circles left on the ground by crafts, distorted perceptions of time. And Vallée wasn't alone. The UFO investigator John Keel and Alan Hynek of Project Blue Book came to very similar conclusions. Alan Hynek, once the face of government skepticism, eventually admitted that the UFO phenomenon is somehow associated with human consciousness itself. These stories don't prove some grand conspiracy, but they do suggest that humans across time and continents keep experiencing something. This even overlaps with Christian writings. The Bible warns of stoike thukasmu, the elemental spirits of the world, In Galatians, Paul describes these elemental spirits as enslaving beings that masquerade as gods. Most scholars believe that Paul saw these elemental spirits as regional spirits tied to the land. And this ties directly back to Kirk's theory on second sight. It's the idea that some people are more sensitive to these spirits because their families have lived there for generations. In Ephesians, Paul uses the term archaea and exousia, the principalities and powers. He writes that we don't wrestle against flesh and blood. In other words, the Bible warns that we are in a spiritual fight, not against just evil ideas or bad people, but against real spiritual powers that are working behind the scenes. Even medieval exorcist manuals caution priests that spirits often appear as beautiful and benevolent before they reveal their true nature. The early church father Origen of Alexandria echoed this exact same view in the 3rd century. He taught that these invisible beings were assigned to oversee the land. Origen warned that many of them lie and seek to be worshipped as gods. He believed that these elemental spirits maintained the natural order in the land, but they were false gods masquerading as divine. Robert Kirk reported on the Sith. Gervais recorded stories of fairy abductions. Pascal Randolph described the elemental intelligences, and Paul warned of the elemental spirits. Something is interacting with humanity, and it doesn't want to be seen for what it is. And this pattern isn't isolated to Europe or the Middle East. The same pattern surfaces everywhere. In West Africa, they have the Aziza, who are said to be forest spirits who offer humans secret knowledge. In the Philippines, you have the Encanto, who lure humans into their realm through charm. In Islam, you have the jinn or the genie that are shape-shifting beings that can possess humans. In Wales, you have the Toloi Teg, a beautiful, dangerous pale figure who steals children and replaces them with changelings. Across all of these cultures, the stories are the same. Hidden beings, strange realms, lost time, spiritual manipulation. And today, when you hear the stories of modern UFO abductees, you hear the same things. No matter where you look, the basic shape of this story stays the same. Of course, none of this verifiably proves anything, but it sketches a map. It's a repeating pattern across time and geography and belief systems. But the pattern is real, and it's growing harder to ignore. We are not the first generation to encounter the unseen, and we won't be the last. The question is not whether the unseen world exists. The question is, will we recognize it when we see it, or will we call it by a new name?